Hello, ladies and gentlemen of Eisenhower County. My name is Alexander Kwok. I am an environmental health specialist for the Arkansas Department of Health, and today I will be speaking to you, the residents of Eisenhower County, about radon exposure in this county. I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to come listen and learn, and to discuss radon exposures, its risks, and what roles you, as a concerned citizen, can have to protect yourself and your loved ones from radon. The agenda for this meeting is to discuss three major topic areas. First, to ensure everyone is starting with a strong foundational knowledge, we will cover what exactly is radon. Second, we will discuss what effects radon exposure can have on human health. And last, we will discuss how you can protect yourself against radon. I have included these corresponding icons on each slide of the presentation just to help you keep on track during the discussion. So let's begin. At its most basic aspect, radon is a chemical element. For you chemistry buffs, you can find it here at number 86 on your trusty periodic table. And practically speaking, however, it is a tasteless, smellless, invisible gas. Next, we can discuss how radon is formed in the first place. Radon is formed from a process known as radioactive decay. There are many elements in our natural world that are unstable, and they constantly emit particles and bits of compact energy in a process known as radiation. As elements emit radiation, they can change into other elements in a somewhat predictable pattern. Scientists have discovered that radioactive elements present in Earth's crust, such as uranium, thorium, or radium, can emit radiation and eventually degrade into radon. Radon itself is radioactive and can emit particles and change into other elements as well. Sometimes these other elements are referred to as radon daughters or radon progeny. And this is what is depicted here in this graph. Now, there's no need to get bogged down in the details here. I just wanted to show you the concept that radon is both formed from radioactive materials and is itself radioactive. Here we just see radium at the top here emits some radiation and turn into radon. And then radon itself emits radiation and can turn into all of these other elements and chemicals that we see down here at the bottom of the graph. So now we can discuss possible locations of exposure to radon. One location to bring up is the workplace. As we previously discussed, radon can be formed from materials found in our Earth's crust. So occupations such as mining or uranium processors can be put at a higher risk of being exposed. Also, fertilizer handlers can be exposed to radon, as fertilizer has been shown to contain amounts of radium, which can decay and then turn into radon, as we just discussed. But more importantly, and probably more importantly for the people in this room here, is the aspect that radon, or that we can be exposed to radon through our own home. And so this is the most common way through which American citizens are exposed to radon. So that can happen through either the air or the water. Let's keep in mind and remember that radon is a gas. So when it's formed in the Earth's crust, in the soil, it can seep its way up and enter buildings through things like cracks in your foundation or gaps that are found around pipes or wires or vents. It is typically the low-lying areas of your homes, such as your crawl spaces or your basements, that have the highest concentration of radon. And so even though air is the most common source of exposure, I've included water here also just for completeness' sake. Radon is usually not a problem when your source of water is surface water. However, if your source is groundwater, like a private well, or maybe you even have a public water supply system that uses groundwater, this could increase your risk. However, public water systems have the ability to treat water to reduce radon levels before it's delivered to your home. If you have any questions or concerns about your water levels, you can always contact your local water supplier and voice your concerns. Here I also want to take the time to introduce concentration units used in the measurement of radon in air. We use the units of picocuries per liter of air. Picocuries is just a measurement of radiation activity. And it's an easy relationship to visualize and conceptualize. The higher the amount of radon in the air, the higher the risk of adverse health effects. And I've also included here some standards to keep in mind as we continue the presentation. Especially pay attention to the 4 picocuries per liter measurement, which is the level at which the EPA recommends that action needs be taken. Since radon is derived from components in the soil, average concentrations of radon can vary widely depending on where you reside. Here we have presented a map assembled by the EPA that gives each county a designation of the predicted average indoor radon screening levels, with the red areas, Zone 1, corresponding to counties with predicted screening levels greater than that recommended action level of 4 picocuries per liter. So now I've circled our area of the country here, and we notice that it's mostly yellow, Zone 3. Which corresponds to a predicted average indoor radon screening level less than 2 picocuries per liter. Does this mean that we're all safe? Not necessarily. Remember that these are average values and that radon levels can vary widely depending on where you reside, even down to the level of individual streets and neighborhoods. One house on Main Street, House A, could have a significant difference in the amount of radon present in its air compared to House B just next door. So the only surefire way to find out is to test. And so we will discuss testing later on in this presentation. So how does radon harm humans? Remember that the primary route of exposure is through the air. So inhalation will be the primary route of absorption. There stands to be a small amount of risk involved with ingestion of radon in water, but this is considered minuscule in comparison to what we see in air. So as radon or its progeny are taken into the body, they continue to emit that radiation. It is through this mechanism that radon can damage our internal structures. Since we're inhaling it, the primary structure that is involved is our lungs. Other structures stand to be affected as well. Perhaps if you were to ingest radon through water, maybe your GI lining could be affected. And there is some evidence that other structures in our body could also be affected, which we'll discuss a little bit later on. So we know that radon can damage internal structures. Now we can discuss what particular diseases it can cause. The number one disease to discuss is cancer, specifically lung cancer. Professional societies such as the American Cancer Society and the American Lung Society, as well as governmental agencies such as the EPA, tout the serious association that radon exposure has with lung cancer. The EPA, for instance, lists radon as the second leading cause of lung cancer cases, second only to smoking. In fact, radon is listed as the leading cause of lung cancer in those who are non-smokers and who have never smoked. Additionally, it is estimated that radon exposure is responsible for 20,000 lung cancer deaths every year in the United States. Additionally, there is some evidence associating radon exposure with other forms of cancer, particularly leukemia or central nervous system tumors. However, the evidence so far is nowhere near as conclusive as what it is for lung cancer. There is also evidence that radon exposure has been linked to the aggravation of prior health conditions. For example, some studies have shown a relation between chronic obstructive pulmonary disease mortality with increased levels of radon exposure. So with knowledge of all the adverse health effects that radon can cause to the human body, both the EPA and the Surgeon General recommend testing for all homes for radon. They do this because A, the test is relatively inexpensive, and B, they are simple to perform. That being said, there are some nuances to the process, so I hope to distill the details down into some quick take-home points. First, you can divide tests into two major categories, short-term or long-term. The first difference being pretty evident in the name. Short-term tests are designed to run anywhere from 2 to 90 days, while long-term tests are designed to run for at least 90 days. The second difference is the cost. Short-term tests usually run about $15 or so, while long-term tests are slightly more expensive at $25. Additionally, radon levels tend to vary from day to day and from season to season, so the short-term test is less likely to get a truly accurate reading of your year-round average compared to long-term tests. Going a step further, within each category of short-term and long-term tests, there are a wide variety of tests that have different mechanisms to detect your radon levels. So each test has its own specific set of instructions. The best thing you can do is to follow the instructions to a T on the specific test that you end up buying. Those test instructions are usually simple, straightforward, and walk you through the entire process. However, if already you're feeling overwhelmed and don't want to deal with this, there are, certified, trained experts who will come and test your home for you. Just bear in mind that that route is going to be more expensive and a little bit more involved. So the EPA has developed and devised its own recommended method of self-testing. First, you can start with just the most convenient test, the short-term test. And if the reading comes back much less than that 4 picocuries per liter reading, then you're good to go. If the reading comes back near or higher than that 4 picocurie per liter reading, then you should follow up with the second test to make sure. For your second test, you have the option to perform either a long-term test or a short-term test, depending on your individual needs. If you're in a short time period, you're in a crunch of time, a short-term test will suffice. However, if you do have the time, the long-term test is more likely to give you that accurate estimation. Regardless, the results of the second test can help guide your next steps. If you choose to follow up with the second short-term test, the higher the short-term results, the more certain you can be that you should fix your home. You can take the average of the two tests, and if the average is near that 4 picocurie per liter mark or higher, the EPA strongly urges you to consider fixing your home. Remember that there is no safe level of radon exposure, so that 4 picocurie per liter cutoff level is just a recommendation. If your average is 3.9 or 3.8, there's still a strong consideration that perhaps you should put forth some mitigation efforts. So you've done your test and news comes back, you have high radon levels. Now what? So there are a multitude of proven methods to lower radon levels in your home or building. But the first thing you want to do before trying any of these techniques is to get the opinion of an expert in the field. So the EPA highly encourages you to make use of qualified contractors who are trained to fix radon problems. You can check with the state radon office for a list of names of qualified contractors in the area. However, if you do want to go it alone, you can still contact the state radon office and they can offer you guidance and assistance. So the primary method of fixing the problem is a method called soil suction radon reduction. Basically, it's just a vent pipe system with a fan that pulls radon from beneath the home and vents it to the outside air. Similar methods exist for homes with crawl spaces, though with some modifications. The somewhat good news is that these fixes cost about the same as other common home repairs, with averages around the $1,500 mark. There are other methods that you could utilize that include sealing cracks and other openings in your foundation, or installing home pressurization or ventilation devices. These alternative methods are oftentimes secondary to the suction systems, as they are not as effective, and they can pose some other problems, such as increasing your heating and cooling utility. And we would be greatly remiss as public health officials not to mention this aspect of radon risk mitigation. One of the best things you can do to reduce your risk of developing radon-associated lung cancer is to stop smoking. Here, I just want to draw your attention to the observation that when looking at people who are exposed to 4 picocuries per liter of radon over a lifetime, about 7 out of every 1,000 non-smoking people will develop lung cancer. If you add smoking to the mix, that number rises to 62. So one cost-effective, overall just general good health habit to take on is to quit smoking. And here is my list of sources that I've included in this presentation. And now I'm just opening up the floor for questions, comments, and concerns. Thanks for your time.